Welcome into another edition of the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, it has sure been an interesting couple of days around the Texas A&M program. Not a good couple of days after a shocking 17-14 loss to Appalachian State on Saturday afternoon, and has kind of really, I think, sent some shockwaves through the program to reevaluate things, reevaluate the quarterback position. Starting there, what did you make of like that loss, and what do you think kind of went wrong? What were the biggest things you feel like went wrong when you watched that game?
Well, man, just shoot, man. We were, getting ready to, it's a huge visitor weekend, and we'll talk about that later in the week. But
Yeah,
we were getting ready to talk about, game day coming to College Station. I think game day was already making plans, and just had to get through the Appalachian State game, and now game day is going to Boone, North
Appalachian
Carolina. So
State.
App State is getting game day. So yeah, it obviously didn't go well. Nobody played particularly great. I mean, the defense for how long they were out there did well, but you got to get off the field. You got to stop them on
Yeah,
third down or fourth down or whatever. So that wasn't great. But yeah, quarterback play. Left a lot to be desired. I mean, Haynes King threw for 360 whatever yards against Sam Houston, but then had less than 100 yards against App State, and you know, he didn't have they didn't have a ton of plays. I mean, A&M only ran 38 plays or something like that.
yeah,
Less than half of what the Mountaineers ran, just because they couldn't get on the field. But blocking was not great. But still, I mean, there were times. Evan Stewart was open a few times, and underthrown to him, and you just got to be able to get the ball out. You got to look downfield. And I think Haynes was a little quick to run. He did have one real long run, but a little quick to run. So I don't know. Is Max Johnson the answer? I don't know, but Max is proven. I mean, his last action as a college QB was winning at Kyle Field against not at Kyle Field in Baton Rouge against A&M. And so I mean, he's proven he can do it. So I mean, I don't know if that's the answer. I mean, do you think that's the answer?
yeah. I mean, I was looking at some of the film from that game, and they just really got dominated in the trenches, to be honest. But looking at the quarterback position specifically, Max Johnson had 27 touchdowns and 6 interceptions last year playing for LSU, behind not a good offensive line, really not a whole lot of a running game. Has experience playing in the SEC. I feel like you have to at least give him a look and see. It can't go any worse than it did on Saturday. Let's just be completely honest. To not even have 100 yards passing against a team that gave up 63 points the week before. I know you're not going to. It's not one of those things where you expect A&M to come out and score 63 points. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
But to not even have 100 yards passing, to not be able to get anything going, and to only run 38 plays, it's concerning to me, and it's concerning because the schedule gets so much harder from here. Like, you look at Miami, you look at Arkansas. I just feel like you have to give Max Johnson a look and at least see what he can do with this offense, and and go from there. I think he can certainly make all the throws, whether it's a mobility factor or knowledge of the offense. If it's a knowledge of the offense, then you've got to be able to simplify it down to what Max Johnson's able to do. And so from there, I just feel like you have to give him a look and see where it goes. Where do you kind of stand on that? I know it's kind of been a hot topic around the boards the last couple of days.
I mean, why not? Why not let him have a chance? I mean, Haynes King, you sort of know what you have in him. I think though, reading the tea leaves, I think that might be what's happening. I
Yeah,
mean, so the press conference, Jimbo Fisher, normally if you're asked about a QB, you give him a vote of confidence, no matter what. Like, yeah, Haynes is our guy. Jimbo Fisher did not say that. And then going back to the game, so Max never went in, but there was a time, I mean, he put his helmet on, he thought he was going in. I mean, it looked like, he was out there with seemingly with the offense when they were about to run out on the field for that last drive. And then Haynes King ended up going out there. Maybe it was the next last drive, but, he looked ready to go in. So somebody had told him something, hey, be ready. So, and, it wasn't like that was mop up duty. I mean, that was when A&M needed a score. So, they had him ready to go in. So I think, I mean, even if he doesn't try it out there, as a starter this week, I think there's going to be a really short leash for Haynes King. And you know what? At this point, see what happens. You know what? It's national title hopes are pretty much out the picture at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with just 4 teams making the playoffs still. So I mean, what's it hurt if you tried him out there? If he's awful, well, then against Arkansas, you start Haynes again or start Connor Wigman. See how the freshman does. I mean, that was the thing we kept talking about. Hey, they're not going to throw a freshman out there at the beginning, but if things go south, then hey, why not, man? Start the Connor Wigman era early. So I don't see what harm it could cause. I mean, you can't really do worse on offense than A&M did this last game.
No doubt. And, one of the things I kept thinking about as I looked, when I look back over the last couple of days about what A&M could have done, they could have also made Haynes King's life a lot easier in terms of play calling and things like that. It felt like they could have got him out on the edge and tried to, simplify some of the reads, maybe get some of the read option stuff going. And instead it was just drop back after drop back after drop back and trying to force things of sorts. And to your point about Max Johnson, I think, there was a point after the game when Jimbo Fisher said, yeah, we did consider going to Max Johnson, but we didn't have enough plays to do it. And, you kind of pointed to, well, when was the situation? They had the fumble on the play when they looked to be getting things going. Evan Stewart fumbles. Then, put a drive together that gets them in field goal range, but they just didn't have the ball. The defense couldn't get off the field and couldn't get out of, second and 6, third and short, fourth and short. They converted 3 fourth downs to keep drives going, and pretty much all of it came on the ground right at A&M's defensive line and right up the middle. And so, it's not just the quarterback play. There was a lot of blame to go around, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's tight end, whether it's wide receivers. And I'm going to be really interested to see how A&M responds against Miami, though. One of the things Jimbo Fisher brought up and a lot of players did as well, that this game kind of felt like going into this week kind of felt like 2020 against Alabama when their backs had been against the wall, going with Florida, coming back to play Florida. Felt like their backs were against the wall last year when Alabama was coming to town. This sort of feels like the same sort of scenario where, it's only week 3, but the season's sort of on the line here in terms of Miami and Arkansas the next 2 weeks. We talked a lot about that road stretch going to Mississippi State, Alabama.
Yeah. We didn't
South
expect
Carolina.
We didn't expect a loss headed into it. Yeah.
That is so far down the road right now to even think about. But A&M's got to these next 2 weeks against starting with Miami and Arkansas are huge before they do go on that trip. Otherwise, this season can get off the rails real quick.
Yeah, maybe try and get with the schedule makers and bring that UMass game into the middle. Maybe get that during the bye week and have a bye week later and later in December get UMass on the schedule. Although you know what, that's not a good football team. UMass.
Yeah,
I was about to say, I was like, you never
You're
can
scare
take
people
anything
with
for granted.
Appalachian State.
You never can take anything for granted, but UMass is not a good football team. So I'm confident in saying that A&M would beat the Minutemen if they played. But yeah, man, wouldn't see if you can pay them a couple extra million to come earlier in the year. So you get a little,
Arkansas game.
Yeah, you get a home. You get a home game in the middle of this ridiculous road streak. But yeah, so I mean, this team, this is sort of do or die time. I mean, if you're not competitive against Miami, then that bodes terribly for Arkansas the next weekend, who's now a top 10 team. Mississippi State had a win over the weekend. Then you got Alabama, South Carolina. They fell down early to Arkansas, and then got back in it, and then ended up losing, but much improved with Spencer Rattler at QB, and then Ole Miss after that, and then Florida. There's no just like relaxing and taking a deep breath in this schedule really until you get to UMass. So this is sort of do or die. If A&M loses this game, it sets a really, really bad tone. And if they win it, then it's like Florida in 2020. They were coming off a 12-7 win over Vanderbilt, barely beating Vanderbilt, getting blown out by Alabama, and then they had Florida, who was a top 10 team at the time, beat them, and then went on the run, finished number 4 nationally. So, A&M can still turn things around, but, it's really, they cannot afford just multiple losses in a row, especially with the schedule coming up.
The margin for error is totally gone. And there was a little bit of good news from Monday that Jimbo Fisher did confirm. He talked about it over the weekend as well. Bryce Foster is a guy that they expect to maybe get back into the fold and be able to practice this week. They've missed him the past 2 weeks. For me, though, there's still more issues up front. This is the second straight week that A&M has not been able to consistently run the ball. There's been confusion. There's been different guys blowing assignments. I do think it'll help getting him back in the fold, though, when you look at a guy that can make calls and make adjustments and make some of those switches. And even if you look at a guy like Matthew Wyckoff being able to play some center, which Jimbo Fisher still talked about, and having Bryce Foster being able to slide into one of those other guard positions to get them on the field together, I still think Bryce Foster's got to be your center and a guy that can make all the checks and all the calls. But it would be big to just get him back in the fold and see if he can provide some stability to that offensive line that I think everybody expected would be better early on in the year than they have been, but they just have not been able to get it going over the first couple of weeks.
No, the offensive line, Foster will help, and because he'll make the calls and he'll keep the, he's the experienced snapper. He'll keep the the big dudes in the interior off, and but who knows? I mean, really, the whole line has struggled, and then Devon Achane just as a feature back, as an every down back. I mean, so far the experiment hasn't really worked. I mean, he's always been a great change of pace back with his speed, but he doesn't have the size of, an Isaiah Spiller, before that Trevion Williams, that can really take that pounding. So, I mean, is A&M going to use Ernest Crownover more? Are they going to get, LJ Johnson in there with the ball, a bigger guy? I mean, who knows? But right now the offensive line just isn't able to make those holes for Achane. But I mean, even on defense, the defense played well. But they could not get off the field. And, I got to wonder, with Walter Nolan out and McKinley Jackson out, A&M has all this talent on the defensive line, but almost all of it's at end. I mean, you have some of the lowest rated guys that have signed, on campus that are playing on the interior. And, that's where they're having trouble stopping the run, especially on those, intermediate and short things. So does the defensive line need, some sort of overhaul? You really got to hope McKinley Jackson's going to be back. Walter Nolan, I don't know the timeline on him. I think the only player Jimbo Fisher ruled out was Jalen Jones, but who knows with those guys. But you need some defensive tackles back, and maybe some of these huge guys that they recruited at end, have them slide inside, even if just temporary, to get some talent in there, and some guys that, I mean, it's hard for these 330-pound guys. Isaiah Rakes is, he's an overachiever, good player. But I mean, he's playing just so. They had 85 plays or whatever they had to be on defense. He was in there a ton. I mean, that's just wearing him out. You need more rotation at tackle. There was a ton at end, just not enough at tackle.
And that was the thing when they were just on the field so much that you look at this is one of the things when they recruited and invested so much in the defensive line and the line of scrimmage, is to be able to rotate and keep guys fresh and be able to dominate late in the game. And they have experimented with things, bringing guys like Anthony Lucas and Eni White and standing them up a little bit and trying different things like that. But it goes back to the linebacker issues we talked about, missing a guy, a couple guys right now, and suddenly the depth starts to show up. Andre White's a guy, as soon as he goes down, now there's depth issues, and there's problems being able to stop the run. And so we talked about it as a concern in the preseason, looking at that linebacker depth, and it's certainly played true early on. But it wasn't all terrible for Texas A&M last week. And on the field it was, but on the recruiting trail there was some good news. We're gonna talk about that right after a quick break. Welcome back into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, A&M, what makes the Appalachian State loss a bit more frustrating is A&M was finally starting to get some momentum on the recruiting trail and as a program as well heading into last week, with two additions with Braven Rogers and TJ Shanahan. First, starting with Braven Rogers, getting him back in the fold kind of gives A&M that strong start to the secondary we talked about before of Javon Thomas, Bravion Rogers, Dalton Brooks. Really good start there with more guys, obviously, that they're targeting. But just a guy that I think, it always felt like it was kind of going to trend back to A&M's direction the past couple of weeks. Decommitted about a month ago. I feel like it was a month and a half ago, and it quickly seemed like A&M was going to be able to smooth that over and get him back into the fold with LSU, another program that was pushing for him. What do you think it means to get him back in the fold, and where that secondary kind of sits now?
Oh, big get. I mean, so Bravion Rogers just, loved A&M. It took him, he's a national top 100 guy.
Yeah.
Took A&M a little while to offer him. And as soon as they did, he spent 2 weekends in a row in Aggie land and committed almost immediately, despite having a ton of other offers. So you knew he loved A&M. Ended up decommitting sort of spur of the moment. I mean, he didn't even tell a lot of people he was going to do it. I mean, I think it came as a surprise to a lot of people around him. So he decommitted. LSU had a big part in that. I mean, he had been to Baton Rouge. They really wanted him, were working on him. But almost immediately after decommitting, he sort of, had, I guess, a change of heart or just returned to it. I mean, it wasn't very long that he truly wanted to be decommitted. So, he had given every indication that he planned to be back in the fold. He had talked about taking an official to Baton Rouge first, but ended up just saying, hey, forget it. I want to be an Aggie, and wanted to help with the momentum. So, yeah, it's huge getting him back in the class because, I mean, the DBs, him and Javon Thomas are two pure corners that are really good. Neither one is huge, is big, but, they're both physical, both can run. And just stick to the man. And then Dalton Brooks at safety. I mean, those are three just absolutely elite defensive backs. So, having him back in the fold is big time. I mean, the only position that at this point, defensive line is almost like, a cherry on the top if they get a stud lineman, so if David Hicks doesn't end up at A&M, you want David Hicks, but if he doesn't, it's not the biggest loss because of what they already have on campus. But defensive back, yeah, they signed some guys last year, but it never hurts to have more, especially with a lot of people graduating. So other than linebacker, that's the one position that, is extremely important. So having those two guys and having Bravion, and shoot, if all else fails, he can play offense too in the slot. I mean, he's a standout on both sides of the ball, just like Javon Thomas and Dalton Brooks, actually. So yeah, it's, and get him in on special teams. So that's a big win over LSU too. So I mean, it helped with both talent and perception in the class.
No doubt, they've talked about him and just what he's able to do with his hands, getting his hands on the ball on both sides of the ball, and just a guy that I think allows you to also, you don't have to spend your time trying to get Braven Rogers back in the fold. Now they can turn their gears towards Peyton Bowen and some of these other guys that they're working to flip. And so just to get in, to have guys like Braven Rogers and Javon Thomas and Dalton Brooks now all working to get those other guys in the fold and finish out that class is huge. And then the other one, speaking of huge, felt like this one's been on the cusp for over a month now. You and I have both had crystal balls in going back.
I mean, every
July,
time we do a prediction,
Shanahan.
Yeah, when it's like, hey, who's going to be the next commit? He was always, one of the leaders of that. You're like, when is he going to do this?
When is he going to do it? And I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he kind of winked and said he was still coming to making up his mind. But when he did, he'd be 100% locked in with whatever school he was choosing. But I think that getting him in the fold, one, he's a pure, just really physical, tough, nasty player. For those who haven't seen him, he's some fun film to watch if you just need to sit back and have a better start to this week. Just turn on his film and you'll feel real good in a hurry.
What was just a random opposing schools or another school's message for what they try and say about
there was some
film?
gripes from a random opposing school. We won't name him by names, but saying that he was too physical, too nasty, and that
too physical. He should be arrested or something like that.
He needed to be charged or something like that.
Yeah,
that talks about him.
He's
just
being mean. He's being mean to those defensive linemen and throwing them on the ground.
Being mean, going after him and driving him into the ground. That is what you want in an offensive lineman. And one of the things we talked about with him, and I think goes along with that point, is him and Steve Adazio just mesh so perfectly. They just feel like a perfect match in terms of mindset, kind of that nastiness, kind of that toughness that they play with. And he talked about that in the past. Yeah. If you've got a lineman that's too physical, fine. I think a lot of A&M fans will be perfectly fine with that,
Yeah,
having a lineman
exactly.
that's too physical and too nasty. You're not going to see a lot of people complain about that, and you see some nastiness and some physicality with Chase Pasantis as well, and so that's getting those two guys in the class is an awfully good start. Chase or TJ Shanahan's a guy that plays tackle at the high school level. I think he's definitely an interior guy at the college level, but just exactly what you want in kind of a road grader and a mauler on the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, he's going to lock onto his man and drive him, 30 yards downfield if he has to. Also good with getting to the second level. I mean, he's 320, 325 or so, but gets to the second level well. He'll go and lock onto those linebackers. Just a really good run blocker. Good pass blocker as well. But he's a guy, we talk about these running game issues. He's a guy that you plug him in there and he makes life a lot easier for the running backs. I mean, just he's about as big as Bryce Foster, and I don't think anybody's as strong as Bryce, but just strong and big old wide body that you can run behind. So he's going to make those backs' lives easier. And I mean, he was one of A&M's top overall targets, regardless of position. So it was huge. You land Braven Rogers one day, TJ Shanahan the next. I mean, A&M. It had been a while since they had a commit, and just a ton of momentum. So that was big, especially with all the talent coming in for the Miami game. Being able to point to, hey, getting some guys in the class. A&M still just 11 commits, but getting up there in the rankings even with just 11 commits. So they're able to point to that, saying, yeah, look at the quality, versus the quantity. The quantity will get there. Look at the quality, and that helps sell other recruits.
No doubt. And you look at just those two guys. I think it's both expected to be in town for the Miami game and to be able to recruit and sell the class. And you look at a guy like TJ Shanahan, originally from the Orlando area, and A&M's been on him for well over a year now. Just when he moved to Westlake, that certainly helped. I think there were certain people at the beginning that thought that might help Texas, but I think it was notable. He immediately, from as soon as he moved in, said, "Yes, I'm also closer to going to A&M, and I can get to A&M whenever I
Yeah.
want at this point." And being closer to the A&M staff certainly helped. And so, I think getting him to Texas and having him in Texas certainly helped it play into A&M's favor to be able to get him on campus more and be able to build that relationship. So, no doubt, we got a busy week coming up, tracking down visitors. It's already going to be a huge group in town on both sides of the ball, and we're going to preview that on Wednesday's episode. So stay tuned for that, and get you guys all squared away there on the recruiting front, as well as touch on the Miami game some more and some keys to that game, and where A&M needs to get better to bounce back. But to those who joined us today, thank you again for joining us, and be sure to give us a 5-star review if you listen to this on Apple or on Spotify. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube to get a notification every time a new video drops. And we'll be back later in the week to preview the weekend and look ahead to that big weekend on the recruiting trail. Again, until then, though, thanks for joining us.